"You can't hide forever, David," she said, her voice a low, triumphant purr. She was standing at the threshold of my cabin, a flimsy, useless violation notice in her hand, a sneer plastered across her face. My entire body was frozen, a cold, hard knot of fear tightening in my gut. I had just walked around the corner of the porch, a bag of groceries in my hand, to find her trying to pick the lock on my front door. I had no idea what she wanted, but her presence on my property was a gross violation. A trespass I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I dropped the bag of groceries, the sound of glass jars shattering on the porch, a deafening crash in the still mountain air. She just looked at me, a victorious smirk on her face, and held up a small silver key. "We have a master key to all the cabins," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "It's for emergencies, and this is an emergency. You've been hiding for weeks. I'm here to collect your fines. You're not getting away this time." She slid the key into the lock, a sickening metallic click echoing in the quiet. The door swung open and she stepped inside. But as she did, the light from my living room spilled out onto the porch, illuminating a figure standing just behind the door. And that's when everything went wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. What would you do if this happened to you? And subscribe to HOA Files. My name is David, and my story, like so many of these HOA nightmares, started with a dream. Not a grand, extravagant dream, but a quiet, peaceful one. My wife Sarah and I had been saving for years to buy a little place on the lake. A cabin, not a mansion, where we could escape the hustle and bustle of city life. A place to decompress and reconnect. The cabin itself is nothing spectacular, a log home with a wraparound porch and a stone fireplace. But to us, it was everything. It was a place of memories in the making. Our little piece of paradise. It was tucked away on a secluded mountain lake, part of a small, exclusive community called Lake Serenity. We were technically part of the Lake Serenity HOA, but our cabin was on the quiet, secluded side of the lake. We paid our dues, attended a meeting once every 2 years, and generally kept to ourselves. Life was simple, predictable, and perfectly peaceful. But then, she moved in. Her name was Carol, and she moved into the sleek, modern McMansion on the other side of the lake, a hulking monument of glass and steel that looked utterly out of place amidst the rustic charm of the other cabins. The first time I saw her was at the annual summer barbecue. She cornered me by the dessert table, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. A look of disapproval on her face. "You're the new guy, right?" she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The one with the cabin on the other side of the lake?" "I've been here for a little over a year," I said, trying to be friendly. "And yeah, that's me. I'm David." She didn't offer to shake my hand. "Well, David, I just want to let you know that I'm the new head of the HOA. We have a lot of changes planned. A lot of improvements. We need to bring this community up to a higher standard." She gestured to the lawn, to the other cabins, to me. Her words weren't a promise of change. They were a thinly veiled threat. I just smiled, mumbled something about a good barbecue, and went to get more coleslaw. I had no idea I was staring into the eyes of the person who would become my own personal nightmare. The first hint of trouble was a letter. Not an email, but a formal letter on thick HOA, embossed stationery. Violation notice. It read in bold black letters. "Your lawn is in violation of bylaw 4.1 concerning grass height. All lawns must be a uniform height of 2 inches. Yours is 3 inches. My grass was perfectly manicured, a lush green carpet that I took great pride in. But it wasn't 2 inches. I called her, thinking it was a simple misunderstanding. "Hi, Carol," I said, trying to keep my tone light and friendly. "I got a notice about my lawn. I'm sorry, but cutting it to 2 inches would kill the grass. The soil can't handle it in this climate." "That's not my problem," she said, her voice flat. "Bylaws are bylaws. You have 7 days to comply, or a fine will be issued." I felt a flash of irritation. 7 days? The lawn is fine. It's healthy. "Not my problem," she repeated, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Tick-tock, David. The fine was $100 a day, every day, till my lawn was at a uniform height of 2 inches. I bit the bullet and had a team come out to meticulously cut the lawn to her ridiculous specifications. It cost me a fortune, but I paid it. I had a busy life. I didn't have time for this nonsense. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next violation was for my porch light. Violation 7.3. Your porch light is a warm white color. All lights in the community must be a cool white color. I was speechless. A violation for the color of my porch light. The light was warm, inviting, and it gave the cabin a cozy, welcoming glow. I refused to pay the fine. I wouldn't be bullied. That was my first mistake. The fines began to pile up. A letter for excessive noise pollution because of the sound of my wind chimes. A notice about my rainwater collection system being an unapproved structure. A fine for my security camera, which she claimed was a violation of privacy, despite it being pointed squarely at my own front door. I ignored them all, assuming she would eventually just give up. The letters became more frequent, the tone more aggressive. I was so busy with my work, with my life, that the letters began to feel like background noise, a distant buzz of a mosquito. I thought she would move on to someone else. I was wrong. One afternoon, I was at my cabin, working on a project in the garage when I saw a car pull up to my driveway. A sleek black SUV. The passenger door opened, and a woman in a perfectly tailored blazer stepped out. It was Carol. She was holding a clipboard, and she was striding purposefully toward me, a thin, tight smile on her face. "Excuse me," she said, her voice a cool, brittle thing. "I'm here for a routine inspection." "I don't think so," I said, my voice as calm as I could make it. "You're not coming on my property? You have no right." She laughed, a short, humorless little puff of air. "Oh, but I do, David. I have a court order." She held up a flimsy piece of paper. It looked like a legitimate document, but I knew it was a fake. I had an attorney friend who had told me about these kinds of fake documents. She was trying to scare me. "I'm going to give you one last chance to comply. Let me in, or the fines will double." I felt a flash of fury so hot it made my hands tremble. I was a grown man, and I was being held hostage by a woman who thought she owned my property. I wasn't going to stand for it. I just looked at her, then back at my garage and went back to work. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a fight. I was so angry, so utterly hopeless that I couldn't even think straight. I paced my living room, the memory of her audacity a raw, burning wound. It seemed I was beaten. She had used her new position to change the rules, and I was the one who would pay for it. I felt a sense of isolation growing in me. A few days later, a certified letter arrived. This one was different. This wasn't a fine. It was a demand for payment of all outstanding fines, with a new astronomical amount due to a failure to comply clause. The total was over $50,000. The letter stated that if I didn't pay within 30 days, they would begin the process of putting a lien on my house. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a move to take my home. I had no idea how she had pulled it off. She had found a way to weaponize the HOA bylaws, turning them into a financial guillotine. I was so angry, so utterly hopeless that I couldn't even think straight. I paced my living room, the letter a crumpled ball in my hand. It seemed I was beaten. I decided to go to the source. I needed to see the bylaws myself. I went to the community center, asked to see the master copy. The woman at the desk was a sweet older lady named Martha, who had been living in the community for decades. She looked at me with a sympathetic expression. "Carol's been a real piece of work, hasn't she?" she said, her voice a low conspiratorial whisper. She took all the copies home. Said she needed to digitize them. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. I knew what that meant. She was hiding something. The original bylaws, the ones I had signed years ago, were long gone. The ones she was enforcing were her own creation, a perversion of the original rules. My suspicions were confirmed when I saw the official HOA website. It was a joke, a poorly designed webpage with a new set of rules she had seemingly written herself, complete with a payment portal. The whole thing was a scam, a con, and I was the mark. I knew I had to expose her, but I didn't know how. I went back home, defeated. But as I was sitting on my porch swing, staring at my lawn, at the house that might not be mine for much longer, a memory flashed in my mind. The day I bought the house, I had a stack of paperwork, a thick, confusing packet of documents that I was told were the official HOA bylaws. I had signed them, and so had the seller. I remembered putting them in a box somewhere in the attic, the kind of box you forget about until you need it. My heart began to pound. It was a long shot, but it was my only hope. I spent the next 3 hours in the sweltering heat of my attic, rummaging through dusty boxes filled with old tax returns, forgotten photo albums, and Christmas decorations. Just as I was about to give up, I found it. A thick manila envelope, yellowed and brittle with age. Stamped on the front in faded ink, Official HOA Bylaws 1998 edition. I ripped it open, my hands trembling. I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the fine print, the clauses, the rules. My heart was a drum in my chest. And there it was, on page 12. In a section titled Governance, a clause about a 7-person board, with an annual election, and a specific rule that any changes to the bylaws had to be approved by a 2/3 majority of the entire community. Not just the board. Carol had a board of 3. She was a complete fraud. She hadn't been elected. She had appointed herself. The rules she was enforcing were fake. All of it. The fines, the threats, the lien. It was all a lie. I felt a rush of vindication so powerful it made me dizzy. I was going to expose her. I spent the next few days meticulously documenting everything. I took pictures of the bylaws I found, highlighted the key clauses, and created a document detailing all of Carol's fabricated rules and fines. I went to a local print shop and made hundreds of copies. The next morning, Sarah and I went from door to door, silent army of 2, slipping the documents into every mailbox in the community. The whole thing was a ticking time bomb. A few days later, a car pulled up to my driveway. It was Carol. She was holding a thick stack of papers in her hand, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She didn't even get out of her car. She just sat there, a low, menacing growl rumbling in her chest. I ignored her. I just walked around the corner of the porch, a bag of groceries in my hand, to find her trying to pick the lock on my front door. I had no idea what she wanted, but her presence on my property was a gross violation. Trespass I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I dropped the bag of groceries, the sound of glass jars shattering on the porch a deafening crash in the still mountain air. She just looked at me, a victorious smirk on her face, and held up a small silver key. "We have a master key to all the cabins," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "It's for emergencies. And this is an emergency. You've been hiding for weeks. I'm here to collect your fines. You're not getting away this time." She slid the key into the lock, a sickening, metallic click echoing in the quiet. The door swung open and she stepped inside. But as she did, the light from my living room spilled out onto the porch, illuminating a figure standing just behind the door. And that's when everything went wrong. She wasn't just a liar. She was a fraud. My wife, Sarah, was standing in the living room. A uniformed police officer standing just behind her, a stack of papers in his hand. Sarah looked at me, a slow, determined smile on her face. Carol was frozen in place, her face a mask of sheer, unadulterated terror. She had just committed a major crime: trespassing, breaking and entering, an attempted fraud. "That's the one, officer," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong. "That's the woman I just filed the complaint against." The officer stepped forward, his face grim. "Ma'am, I have a warrant for your arrest for attempted burglary and fraud. Please put your hands behind your back." Carol was speechless. The triumphant, cruel smirk on her face had been replaced with one of sheer, unadulterated terror. She looked at the police officer, then at Sarah, then at me. Her entire world, the illusion of power she had so carefully constructed, came crashing down around her. I watched as the officer placed her in handcuffs and led her away, her face a mask of mortification. The moral of the story is simple, and it's one I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Never, ever assume you're beaten. And never underestimate the power of a woman who has a master's degree in criminal justice and a husband who just inherited a family cabin. I have a long road ahead of me, a new battle to fight. The lawsuit to get her to pay for the fines she issued, the fight to have her removed from the HOA board for good. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid. I'm ready. Because Carol's petty tyranny was just the beginning. I've been a target before, and I'll be a target again. But next time, they won't even see me coming.